There are few absolutes in this world. Things that have an essential 100% chance, if you will. The idea that if they don't happen, that it is so statistically improbable that we don't even consider it. Things like how in rom-com movies the guy will always get the girl. Or the fact that when I drop something, no matter how tall, small, wide, air-resistant it might be, gravity will inevitably pull it down to Earth's core as best it can. Even looking past physics and movies, we can look into biology and see the absolute of death. The idea that we really can't stop death. We can slow it, but we can never truly stop it. There's an absolute in the world that will come whether you like it or not. Some of the satirics of the world may even consider taxation to be an absolute, something that you can't truly avoid, with even one of the most notable criminals of his generation, Al Capone, always paying his taxes because he thought the IRS were one of the true people that could catch him. I hope to propose another absolute into our world. And some of the satirics might even agree with me, but not for the same reasons. I hope to propose the idea that all politicians lie, that politicians are not perfect, that their ignorance, that their lack of research or their lack of caring is ultimately harming this world in the climate change crisis. Because these lies don't just stop at, oh, I did not have sexual relations with that woman, or 9/11 was in no means an inside job. They trickle down to something that I hold so dearly to my heart, which is clean energy, which is climate change. And I hope to show you that these politicians, what they're doing is not acceptable. The way that they are feeling it is right to treat the world, the way that they have no regard for the implications, will destroy our Earth. And the only way to stop this is to expect better, is to do better as a people, as a group, as a politician. So, I hope in my train of logic of convincing you to care about climate change that I will set up a few base definitions, a few things to follow the lines of logic, if you will, then we will move forward, and I will show you some examples proving that logic. So, we will start with climate change. Climate change is the idea that as we do almost anything, breathing, using any form of technology, driving, even just walking down the street, we are outputting carbon. Carbon that is cleansed by plants, such as the one on the right side of this picture specifically. This one's a little dead. But this green leaf is able to filter out carbon dioxide and replace it with oxygen. And for millennia, this has been our symbiotic partnership between flora and fauna. But as we have advanced, created these technologies with massive carbonic outputs, we have outpaced the plants. We have reached the point where we are creating more carbon dioxide than they can keep up with. And the implications of that is terrifying. And I will explain to you a little later exactly what can happen due to these increasing carbonic outputs. But first I need to touch on the second most important topic of my speech, which is politics. Politics, important side note, I'm not speaking for any nations, civilizations, tribes that are under rule that they do not approve of, such as civil wars in Syria, things like that, where leaders are appointed by force. I am talking about most nations in the world that have this established system of politics of leaders, and these leaders can be elected in many different ways, whether it's a monarchy, an oligarchy, a democratic republic, or even a normal democracy. These leaders are trusted by their people to go forward and make the best decisions for their nation. And I hope that I can tell you why on this specific point almost every politician we've seen in this world has failed us. So, the exact structure of this speech, I'm going to start with a little talk about environmentalism. I'm going to tell you, as I promised, why climate change is so detrimental and possibly the downfall of this world. And then I will show you that despite this data, there are examples of entire nations turning a blind eye to this, and even, just so you don't think it's a one nation, one problem example, I will show you a band of over 100 nations that together did not even place the priority required in climate change. So, as I said, let's start a little bit about Earth, about environmentalism. So, the Earth is going downhill. The Earth is not doing well in the slightest. And I can immediately cite two references for this. There's a study on the carbonic density of the air and sediments that has shown a notable decrease in plant growth rate and even in some cases killing off plants. And there is a little academic journal of every endangered species in the world, and it is noted that over 1,000 have moved into the endangered species list over the past 2 years. And these aren't even problems that are entirely caused by climate change. These are problems happening in our world right now. So when I go to touch on things like the greenhouse effect, the idea that this excess carbon is escaping into the atmosphere, absorbing solar radiation and warming up our Earth, you can see why there's so many multifaceted issues that center and sprout from climate change. And heating up the Earth may not seem like a problem, but when you're looking at nations like Norway, who completely have to reevaluate their tourism plans over the next 20 years because of this exact change in climate, you can see that it may have much more detrimental effects than you'd expect, because, well, warmer beaches in Cancun and less snow to plow on Sunday is very nice. The idea that by 2080 our temperature will be raising by 1 degree every 4 years is not worth any amount of snow shoveling, any amount of beach days. Because they expect that before that change even happens, by 2080, that 1/3 of all flora and fauna will have gone extinct due to this change in climate, which might sound ridiculous, but when you consider animals like sea turtles, who are so climatically sensitive that their eggs only hatch from 28 degrees Celsius to 31 degrees Celsius, you begin to understand that a 5-degree change, so say in 20 years, they will not be able to lay those eggs in the same areas. And that sounds extreme, but it's not even relevant, because by 2080, sea turtles are already supposed to have gone extinct due to climate change, along with countless other species who have the same climatic sensitivity. We are not just destroying our atmosphere, we are destroying the things that it protects. We're destroying the oceans, the lands, and eventually probably ourselves. So, despite this terrible impending doom that I have just put on all of our shoulders, we can look towards one of the most powerful countries in the world, China. China in 2020 released a 5-year plan, and over a 20-minute interview with Turning Point Politics, a notable news source that tends to say centralist, he mentioned over 5 times about China's efforts to secure a stronghold on their supply of coal, known as one of the most dangerous fossil fuels in the world for the environment, while only mentioning once, a throwaway sentence if you will, that he hopes to improve clean energy going forward. In a detailed 5-year plan, one of the biggest issues in the world got, we hope it'll go better. And this disconnect is not just because the leader of China may be a terrible person, or hates the world, or stomps baby seals, I don't know. It's because there's so many more issues he has to deal with. China has a graying population, is losing its stronghold on the market for resources and energy. China has massive gender equality issues, high suicide rates, mental health. And you want him to focus on something that will not really be relevant until 20 years down the road. It doesn't make much sense. But because of this ignorance, because of not truly understanding this data, he doesn't know that waiting 20 years is too long. And this focus on a result is what creates such a huge disconnect between politicians and environmentalists. Because environmentalists understand the implications, politicians don't have the time to. They have bigger, more pertinent issues that in their brain they need to solve before climate change. But it's hard to say that we'd have the time to. And just so you know, this isn't just a China issue. I will show you what many people regard as the guardian angel of Earth at the moment. The United Nations, a band of over 100 nations organized together to solve some of the biggest problems in the world. You've seen them at UNICEF providing clean water for children in Africa. You see them in Iraq fighting for gender equality. They're some of the most forward-thinking people in the world, some of the smartest minds, some of the greatest resource availability. And even them, they did not put the time towards climate change that was necessary in the year 2000, when the Millennium Development Goals were made. At the turn of the millennia, the United Nations made 10 goals. Of these 10 goals were 10 of the most pertinent issues that they wanted to solve by the year 2015. Number 7 happened to be environmental sustainability. The idea that we can make as much carbon dioxide as those plants can handle, no more. And now, in the year 2021, with record high carbonic output per capita, meaning each person puts out a record amount of pollution, places like China, making up over 26% of the world's pollution, despite making up only less than 10% of the size with no repercussion, we can see that we've essentially worked backwards on that goal. That goal hasn't even improved remotely. And this is one of the greatest powers the world's ever seen. So we know the issue is not power or ability. It's research, it's understanding. It's the ignorance of these politicians, these leaders that tell us that it's not relevant, that it's not important, when it so obviously is. So, going forward, the only way that we can truly expect leaders, people around us, to hold this value in the environment and climate change that I have displayed and hope that you will display is to do the same ourselves. How can we expect to have a leader that cares deeply for the environment if the people that his job is to serve do not? We can't accept leaders that don't care about the environment, because the people shape the government. And together, we can shape a world of climate change. This involvement and keeping this relevance of research and hope is the best way for us to save the world. Because whether you like it or not, this Earth is a ticking time bomb, and we're running out of time. Thank you.